With the urgent need for sustainable solutions to combat climate change and reduce our dependence on fossil fuels, hybrid technologies have emerged, offering a promising solution. Today we're introducing hybrid vehicles to you and whether they are the right choice for you in Australia in 2024. To answer this question, let's take a look at the different perspectives of hybrid cars as well as conventional and all-electric cars. Firstly, let me talk through the three main types of cars about how they work and the convenience of driving them respectively. Currently, the most common type of cars are still conventional petrol or diesel cars. As this image shows, there are several key components of a conventional car: an internal combustion engine, a transmission, and a fuel tank. The internal combustion engine is where the fuel is injected into, combined with air, and releasing energy through combustion. The transmission transfers the mechanical energy from the engine to drive the wheels. Refueling conventional cars is straightforward. Drivers simply need to fill the fuel tank with petrol or diesel at a gas station. Although this process sounds familiar, it underlines our dependency on finite fossil fuel resources and the associated environmental implications, which will be discussed later in this video. All electric cars have a different structure as they do not require internal combustion engines. Instead, as you can see from this image, all electric cars have a battery pack acting as the energy storage of the vehicle. When driving, the electric traction motor, which is equivalent to the internal combustion engine in conventional cars, uses power from the traction battery pack, and the mechanical energy from the motor is transferred to drive the wheels by the transmission. Similar to conventional cars, electric cars have a charge port to recharge them. Recharging can be done by using a specialized home charge unit. Alternatively, public charging stations are also available. Although the limited number of charging stations may pose inconveniences, the drawbacks can be overweighed by multiple benefits of electric cars. As the name suggests, hybrid electric cars are hybrids of conventional and electric cars. They have both internal combustion engines and electric motors. Therefore, a fuel tank stores fossil fuels, which is the primary fuel of hybrid electric cars. The electric generator is what makes them different from conventional cars. It generates electricity from the wheels while braking, and the energy is transferred back to the traction battery pack. For some models, electric generators can be used for both the drive and regeneration. Since the primary fuel is still petrol or diesel, the limited number of charging stations does not affect the convenience of driving a hybrid electric car, and yet there are various benefits using the hybrid power.
I'm going to talk from policies and cost perspective. First, in terms of policies, to alleviate the excessive emission of greenhouse gases in today's society, the government choose to increase taxes on vehicles, especially those with large engines. Fringe benefit tax is one of them. Under the policy, hybrid are exempt from this tax. For some relatively expensive hybrid cars, the threshold for imposing a luxury car tax will also be raised. This tax breaking will greatly improve the cost performance of hybrid cars. And in terms of the cost for buying a car, a hybrid car is usually more expensive because it has two engines. But as I said before, there is a tax credit for hybrid. And there are some very low price cars out there, like this Toyota is a very good example and can be purchased for only $21,400. And by comparison, the cheapest electric car current sales in Australia is BYD Dolphin for $39,000. The maintenance cost of a car after purchase of a car is also a large expense. Cars powered by internal combustion engine tend to be expensive in terms of fuel and in terms of endurance and fuel. The electric cars is not very good at present. And for hybrid cars, by contrast, it can provide cover in events of a failure and, in general, can replace some expensive gasoline with cheaper electricity. In addition, the internal combustion engine is less efficient at low speed, and the electric drive system can provide better power output and efficiency in this situation. At low speed, a car power needs to be typically lower, and an electric system can meet this need more efficiently without relying on internal combustion engine. And the hybrid cars allow for regenerative braking, which helps recoup some of the energy lost during the normal operation. I think that's the reason why people in Australia choose to buy hybrid car a little more than the electric cars.
For hybrid cars to be sustainable, safety is at the forefront of discussions on hybrid vehicle development. And when considering safety, we must largely consider the combination of the internal combustion engine with the electric motor and battery of an electric vehicle and what risks this will pose. First, regarding collisions, let me tell you that there aren't actually any substantial differences between hybrid vehicles, gas vehicles, or electric vehicles. A study has investigated the worst case outcomes of 14 different collisions, whilst varying the crash velocities and impact angles, and it was concluded that for all simulated crash scenarios, no trials led to intrusion of the battery. Moreover, most hybrid cars have stringent inbuilt safety systems that are designed to automatically isolate the high voltages at the battery pack to prevent injury through electric shock. Secondly, onto the fire risks. Hybrids have a slightly higher propensity for fire dangers due to the presence of both the gasoline and the high voltage battery, in addition to the large amount of space this takes. Although reports of fire hazards were greater in the past, however, manufacturers such as Toyota have recalled past faulty vehicles and developed extensive safety features to prevent and contain fires, now minimizing the dangers. Lastly, there have been a few facts in hybrid cars regarding how the flow of an electrical current to the motor reduces a reportedly strong electromagnetic field, and since the battery is located near the drivers, people have speculated whether there are associated health risks. For example, one person stated that their blood pressure rose and they fell asleep 3 times while driving a hybrid. In response, Toyota has measured EMFs inside their hybrid vehicles in the 50 to 60 Hz range and resulted in the same low levels as conventional gas vehicles, below the commission standard. Honda also suggested that others were measuring radiation with the wrong devices, but still, it would also be unethical and a mistake to outright dismiss these concerns.
So another important factor which might impact which car type you choose are the respective environmental impacts, particularly in terms of CO2 emissions. So these impacts can be separated into 3 categories, which are manufacturing, fuel, and operation. To determine the overall environmental impact of a vehicle, the manufacturing process must first be considered. So for hybrid and electric vehicles, the manufacturing of the batteries in the cars requires the mining of precious metals and significant amounts of energy, and this generates extra CO2 emissions, which the manufacturing of petrol vehicles does not involve. However, hybrids do have smaller batteries than electric vehicles, which reduces the environmental impacts of their manufacturing. And then in terms of fuel, for petrol vehicles, the transport of petrol itself can generate CO2 emissions. And for electric vehicles, the generation of the electricity used to charge the car can also be a source of CO2 emissions, depending on if the electricity is generated with fossil fuels or renewable energy sources. So in this graph you can see that electric vehicles in countries which produce lots of energy from renewable sources, such as France and Sweden, have lower CO2 emissions for electric vehicles than countries that use a lot of fossil fuels. So in Australia, a significant amount of our electricity, around 32%, is produced using renewable energy sources, and their contribution is only expected to continue to increase. So recharging electric and hybrid vehicles in Australia has lower associated environmental impacts. The operation of petrol vehicles produces CO2 emissions from the exhaust due to combustion, whereas electric vehicles produce no CO2 emissions during operation. And hybrid vehicles only produce exhaust emissions when using their combustion engine. Effectively, hybrid vehicles involve all of these sources of CO2 emissions in varying amounts, depending on how frequently its electric motor versus combustion engine is used during operation and how much electricity/petrol it requires. But to summarize, their life cycle CO2 emissions are lower than those for petrol, but higher than pure electric, typically. It is also important to remember that the longer you use a hybrid or electric car, the more the overall emissions will decrease when compared to a petrol car, as there are no exhaust emissions. And this basically pays off the carbon debt from the manufacturing process, which means a hybrid car may be a better choice for the environment than a petrol car if you plan to use the car for a long time.
So overall, the combination of using electric power at low speeds and gasoline at higher speeds provides efficiency to the vehicle, not only reducing the cost for fuel, but also reducing the wear and tear on the engine to complement safety and overall minimalizing the emissions of greenhouse gases. Now, to answer the main question whether you should buy a hybrid vehicle in Australia in 2024, the short answer is yes, you should, particularly if you may be mentally prepared to ditch gas in the future but can't make the switch just yet due to personal situations. As Australia is a very multicultural country, this could be due to a variety of cultural reasons. For example, risk perception and self-image of using hybrid vehicles may vary from different cultures, or social factors and cultural orientation could influence purchase intentions and methods. Therefore, there is still the need to adopt more cross-cultural research to explore the communal factors that facilitate sustainable consumption.